On a stormy night at the end of July, when I thought nobody would come by in such weather, the front doorbell rang.
Hello, who is it?
As I opened the door with skepticism, there stood my granddaughter Mia, drenched from head to toe, looking utterly exhausted. Grandma. I was so surprised by the unusual atmosphere that I immediately tried to let her in, but before that, Mia reached out her hand to me and said in a feeble voice, "Please, let this pay for dinner." In Mia's soaked hand was $1, apparently intended as payment for her meal. While I didn't mind feeding Mia without any compensation, her condition seemed far from normal, so I decided to call my husband Matthew over. "Mia, what happened?" "Grandpa, I'll pay, so please, dinner." Mia, still extending the $1 she clenched in her hand to Matthew, was met with a light scoff from him.
What can you get with just $1? Nowadays, even a simple sandwich from a grocery store wouldn't be less than $4, would it?
That's... I could understand Mia's shocked expression very well, and I couldn't grasp why Matthew was behaving this way. It seemed harsh of me even to think this way about Mia, but I hadn't yet realized that there was a variety of circumstances and kindness behind it. I, Chloe, am just an ordinary housewife working part-time at a sandwich shop. Matthew, having retired from a public service job, now runs a wrestling class for local children due to his expertise in the field. Though Matthew can be quite strict and inflexible, it doesn't mean he's necessarily complicated or peculiar. We have a son, Kevin, who has already moved out, living about a 30-minute drive from our house with his wife, Isabella, and their children. If I remember correctly, Isabella and Kevin met through a college friend and got married when they were 28. Kevin works in a technical role at an electronics manufacturer and often has to travel for work, sometimes being away for up to a month. During these times, Isabella naturally ends up taking care of Mia, but as far as I knew, there were no particular issues. Mia used to attend Matthew's wrestling classes and frequently visited our house during her elementary school years, but as she joined the track team in middle school, her visits became less frequent, only a few times a year. However, as they say, no news is good news, so I didn't concern myself too much with Kevin and his family, including Mia. That was until the stormy night at the end of July when I thought nobody would come by in such weather, and the front doorbell rang.
Hello, who is it?
As I skeptically opened the door, there stood Mia, drenched from head to toe, looking utterly exhausted. Grandma. Surprised by the unusual atmosphere, I immediately tried to let her in, but before that, Mia reached out her hand and said in a feeble voice, "Please, let this pay for dinner." Mia's hand held $1, apparently intended as payment for her meal. While I had no issue feeding Mia without any compensation, her condition seemed far from normal, prompting me to call Matthew over.
Mia, what happened?
Grandpa, I'll pay, so please, dinner. Despite Mia extending the $1 she clenched in her hand to Matthew, he lightly scoffed.
What can you get with just $1? Nowadays, even a simple sandwich from a grocery store wouldn't be less than $4, right?
That's... Understanding Mia's shocked expression well, I was puzzled by Matthew's behavior. It seemed my concern was unnecessary as Matthew soon reassured Mia with a kind face.
Don't worry, Mia. What I said was just a general statement. I don't know what's happened, but seeing you like this, how can any of us ignore it? Put your money away and come inside.
Thank you.
There's no need to be so formal. First, take a shower. Chloe, can you get Mia some clothes?
Of course. Come on, Mia. This way. Okay. After having dinner with Mia, we were able to hear about her situation. When I got home after club activities, the door was chained, and I couldn't get in.
To lock out your own daughter, what was Isabella thinking?
It's not the first time it's happened. A few occasions before. Usually, I'd go to a friend's house or hang around outside before going home. The shadows in Mia's words were clear, suggesting there was more to the story than met the eye. Matthew, noticing this, looked very stern.
Not the first time? Mia, can you tell us more?
Prompted by our voices, Mia, with a pained expression, said, "The reason, you can guess. It wasn't the first time the chain was on the door, but on a different day, there were men's shoes in the entrance. Mom was talking very closely with someone."
I see.
Matthew and I both seemed to understand. The fact that even her daughter was locked out and men's shoes were at the entrance. And considering the intimate tone of voice, it was natural to think Isabella was having an affair.
What about Dad?
Dad was on a business trip. It often happens when he's away. To exploit the absence of her daughter suggests a deepening suspicion towards Isabella, but never clearing. However, what a terrible story. Being neglected for an affair must be unbearable, especially for Mia at such a sensitive age. I know what Mom is doing too. That's why it's even more shocking. But I tried to keep quiet and kill time, but it was too hard. Especially when my phone was about to die. We could more than guess Mia's feelings, and it was hard for us as well. I didn't know what to do, then the weather got worse, and somehow I ended up walking here. Anyone would understand how difficult it is to walk a distance that takes 30 minutes by car. Especially wandering on such a stormy night, I couldn't help but feel sorry for Mia.
Even on a stormy day like this, I can't understand Isabella's mentality to leave her daughter out. No, I don't even want to understand.
Matthew seemed very angry, but considering Isabella's selfishness or insensitivity, it was justified.
Don't worry, Mia. You can stay here for a while.
Thank you, Grandpa. Having nowhere to belong must be the hardest thing, so there was no reason for me to oppose Matthew's decision. Matthew seemed to think it problematic that Mia's dad, Kevin, was unaware of the situation, and he immediately contacted him. As a result, after negotiating with his company, Kevin managed to cut his business trip short and return home. With school being on a long break, Mia would continue to stay with us. Mia, of course, had contacted her mom, but after hanging up, she said, "Mom seemed clearly relieved. She said it's better for her that I'm not around." No need to think hard to understand in what way it was better for her. Essentially, without Kevin and Mia, she could spend more time with her affair partner, reaching a new level of audacity. Soon after, Kevin returned.
I'm home. Sorry, Mia.
Dad. Matthew and I explained the situation to Kevin, but surprisingly, he was calm despite being the victim of infidelity.
Actually, I've been suspecting Isabella's affair for a while now. When did you find out? One time I came home, and the room smelled of cigarette smoke. Neither Isabella nor I smoke. There was an ashtray on the desk. She's not very careful.
It seemed like a basic mistake, almost as if Isabella was mocking Kevin.
Considering Mia's feelings and future, I was waiting for the right moment. But I can't forgive her for neglecting our daughter to this extent.
But what will you do?
I'm in the process of gathering evidence of the affair.
Couldn't the cigarette smell be explained away by Isabella starting to smoke, making it undeniable?
Indeed. But Isabella is thoroughly careless. I've found other evidence.
Kevin smirked confidently, but gathering evidence of an affair isn't usually easy.
There were men's underwear in the house that weren't mine. In exchange, one of my pairs was missing.
How shocking. The presence of underwear implies something unsavory naturally.
Did you stay silent? For the time being. I pretended not to notice and preserved the evidence.
Kevin was more prepared than expected and shared this as well.
A little while ago, I took a day off using my paid leave. I lied to Isabella about a short business trip and staked out in front of the house, and then a man showed up.
Did you take a photo?
Of course. Here it is.
Kevin showed us the photo on his mobile phone, and as we all leaned in, Mia exclaimed,
I know this guy."
"Indeed."
"Who's this?"
Matthew answered my question.
"This man, he's one of my students, Donald."
Seems like he's got some nerve." Though Matthew's face appeared calm at first glance, his few words were filled with overwhelming anger, making the affair partner seem pitiable by comparison.
"Shall we storm in and catch them in the act?"
"That might be best. Let's do that."
"Can I come along?" I can't forgive Isabella, and I have a word or two I'd like to say to her.
That's fine. Now, let's plan our approach. Isabella shouldn't know that Kevin has cut his trip short, which works in our favor. Kevin, when was your business trip supposed to end?
Tomorrow. Today would be the perfect day for a surprise, wouldn't it?
That's right. Let's go then. With that decided, all of us except Mia, who obviously couldn't come along, headed to Kevin's house. Upon arriving at Kevin's home, I wondered what we would do if the door was chained in addition to being locked. However, likely feeling secure without children or Matthew around, there was no chain. As expected, there were men's shoes in the entrance, and we could hear voices chatting from the living room.
"I'm home, Isabella." You? Teacher."
Isabella and Donald, who had been enjoying themselves, suddenly paled, looking at us as if they'd seen a ghost.
"Who is this man?" "He's just a friend. Just a friend."
That's right. We were just having a light conversation, nothing inappropriate at all. Isabella and Donald's excuses lacked any conviction and were rather comical. Obviously, such superficial excuses wouldn't appease an enraged Matthew.
"That doesn't seem like nothing to me. Did I interrupt something?"
Even in anger, Matthew maintained his composure, devoid of any vulgarity but filled with justified righteousness. No matter how you look at it, there's no doubt that Isabella is at fault for being unfaithful in anticipation of her daughter's absence, and I can't feel the slightest pity for her as I watch her do it.
"Why are you here now? You're supposed to return tomorrow, right?"
Isabella's attempt at defiance was utterly pathetic, seemingly looking for a way out even now, which was ridiculously amusing.
"Is it fun to commit adultery by locking out your own child?" "What? It's true that Mia is in the way, isn't it? We can't possibly get along in front of our daughter."
Isabella's misplaced anger revealed she lacked any sense of guilt, which was abundantly clear.
"You're quite shameless. It's beyond contempt, it's almost admirable."
Kevin's sarcastic applause conveyed a sense of resignation.
"How can you say your own child is in the way? Have you ever considered Mia's feelings?"
"That's none of my concern." Isabella's defiant response seemed almost like neglect.
"We were having a good time. Leave us." "Are you out of your mind, Isabella? Do you think anyone here is going to give you a second chance?"
Isabella's claims were so absurd they almost became amusing. In contrast, Kevin seemed to be laughing, but now that he knew what was wrong with Isabella, he was actually telling the truth.
"How do you intend to atone for defying me, your teacher?"
Donald could only tremble in response to Matthew's stern questioning. Of course, he would. Defying a clearly superior figure like a teacher is a grave offense in any hierarchy. Suddenly, Donald, claiming, showed a police badge, which took us all by surprise.
"It's obstruction of official duties."
We were all taken by surprise when Donald suddenly said that and showed his police record in front of us.
"What? You're a cop?"
"This is real. Want to get arrested?" It seemed Donald was deliriously desperate.
All of you should be arrested.
Isabella's outburst might have been expected, but where does adultery fit into official duties, and how does catching them warrant our arrest? It's not funny. It's so unexpected I can't even laugh.
Arrest! Arrest! Get out. Just get out.
Watching the two of them repeat themselves like their screws had come loose, my anger passed, leaving only a profound sense of pity.
Dad, Mom. At this point, wouldn't it be faster just to call the police?
That might be true. It's just pitiful. And so, Matthew called the police right from the spot. Officers arrived shortly after, and Donald was taken away.
Where are you taking my boyfriend?
Isabella's words were delusional, seemingly unable to grasp the situation. Incidentally, the responding officer turned out to be Donald's colleague, who was shocked to see him and apologized to us profusely.
The dignity of the police force has really fallen. Skipping work to engage in adultery.
Matthew's astonished remark summed it up perfectly. Thus, Donald was gone, leaving only Isabella and us in the house.
So, that man and I are really nothing.
Isabella's shameless refusal to accept reality was almost beyond belief, prompting Kevin to sarcastically clap and say, "Amazing, Isabella. Truly commendable.
Did you think I hadn't noticed your affair? Eh? Since when did you know?"
Isabella's shocked face was clearly not expecting this, revealing her critical lack of imagination.
Your stupidity is also commendable. I won't list everything, but it was so obvious I thought you wanted me to know. It's your fault. You're always away on business trips.
Isabella still had the audacity to blame Kevin, coming off as a terrible comedian who couldn't get a laugh.
I wouldn't say it's a wife's duty to silently keep the house, but blatantly locking out Mia isn't very motherly, is it? What's wrong with calling something bothersome?
Isabella's escalating anger was grotesque, certainly not something Mia should witness. I think Isabella lacks all of a mom's self-awareness.
So, Mia is a bother, huh? Then, let's make it clear. You and I will take care of her. We're getting a divorce, and you have no complaints, right? How can you jump to that conclusion? A slight indiscretion and you're not convinced?
Kevin's admonishing tone was one thing, but Isabella's response was unexpectedly absurd. Considering she was the unequivocally guilty party, her ability to argue this point was strangely fascinating.
What will happen to my life if we divorce? Isn't that irresponsible? Silence. Don't speak another word.
Matthew's glare was as sharp as a knife, making it clear that no sophistry would work on him.
To think you'd still rely on Kevin after all your misdeeds, you parasite. Isabella, we're getting a divorce. And of course, you and Donald will be paying compensation. No objections, right?
Matthew's presence was imposing, leaving Isabella sweating profusely.
No objections?
Yes. Isabella nodded repeatedly, her teeth chattering. Following that, Kevin and Isabella's divorce was finalized, compensation was settled, and naturally, Kevin received custody of Mia. Mia moved in with me and successfully got into a high school within commuting distance. With Kevin still busy and Matthew not the best with children, I decided to quit my part-time job at the sandwich shop. Though our income became slightly less reliable, having Mia close by was happiness enough to outweigh any concerns. Then Kevin mentioned, smiling,
I might be getting a promotion soon. Then I can work indoors.
What will happen to that house?
I'm thinking of selling it. Can I impose on you guys to live here?
That's no trouble at all. We'd welcome it, actually. At that moment, the spaciousness of our house, which could easily accommodate 3 families, felt particularly fortunate. With Mom gone, I took over the household duties, but it hardly felt like a burden.
Grandma's cooking is so delicious.
Seeing Mia always enjoying her meals from the bottom of her heart made all the hardships worth it.
Hey, Grandpa, can I go back to the wrestling class?
Finding a reason to say no would be harder. Don't hold back. And so, Mia started attending the class again in place of her school club activities, honing her skills. Their relationship couldn't have been better. Mia looked up to Matthew as her mentor, and he cherished her as one of his precious disciples. As for Isabella, whose divorce was finalized, the fact that Donald was a police officer became a bit of a news story. After all, an active duty officer neglecting his duties for an affair was bound to cause a stir. According to the news, Donald received a stern warning and chose to resign voluntarily, which made perfect sense. There was no way to know about Isabella's whereabouts afterward, and to put it coldly, as long as she paid Kevin the compensation, it didn't matter. Though paying a substantial amount in compensation likely strained her finances, frankly, we couldn't care less, nor were we kind enough to offer help. However, according to Kevin, Isabella quickly broke up with her affair partner.
How do you know that?
Curious about the source of his information, Kevin laughed dismissively.
Believe it or not, she contacted me asking if we could start over. I entertained her just to hear her out. Guess what she said? What? She said it'd be easier if someone else supported her. It seems the idea of working for herself never crossed her mind. Quite remarkable.
Isabella's ingrained laziness impressed me, albeit negatively. Just when I thought that was the end of it, Isabella showed up at our house one day.
Come on! I'm in trouble here. Don't you have any compassion to help those in need?
Her astonishing self-centeredness reached a level of obsession. And who might you be?
Don't pretend you don't know me, Matthew. Silence, parasite. You have no right to call me by name.
Matthew's glare once again pierced through Isabella. It was clear that Isabella lacked not only a sense of guilt but also the basic concept of learning from her mistakes. Why would anyone show mercy to a stranger?
Do you want me to call the police again? What cold-hearted people!
I'd rather not be lectured by a parasite. Kevin's sight spoke for all of us. Despite Isabella's persistence, she eventually kept her distance, allowing us to finally enjoy some peace. Even if there were ways to find out, we had no interest or reason to care about what happened to Isabella afterward. Kevin successfully transitioned to an office job, Mia grew up healthy and well, and our lives continued happily without any further disturbances.